Hello, I'm Bertie Taylor, Vice President of Content at RigZone, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Well Engineering webinar. As energy companies explore new frontiers and take on increasingly complex projects, collaboration, diverse and remarkable teams are key to their continued success. Joining us today are three experts from Shell who will talk about some of the company's biggest deepwater and onshore projects to date, highlighting challenges, staffing requirements, and related technology. After the presentation, we'll have a panel discussion followed by questions from the audience. On our panel, we have Malcolm Jones, General Manager, Well Operations, Melissa Morris, Engineering and Operations Team Lead, and Kim Karowski, Wells Engineering Manager for NAM. I want to remind everyone that questions can be submitted during the presentation, and we encourage you to do so. With that, I'll turn things over to Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Bertie. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be located. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Malcolm Jones, and myself and my colleagues would like to tell you a little bit more about our careers within Shell, but also some of the exciting things that we do within Shell within the Wells community. Firstly, a few definitions for you and also a cautionary note. Nothing we say today should be used for predicting the future or investment decisions. This is just a look back at what we've been up to. I'd like to start with a safety moment. Safety is an overriding priority within Shell. Keeping our colleagues, our friends, our families and the society at large safe is of the utmost importance. And with all of you located around the world, it's hard to get into a specific discussion about this. So I'll just have a little quick reminder for those of you like myself who are joining this webinar from an unfamiliar location. Please take the time to understand the local emergency procedures, the emergency exits. So in the event that something doesn't go according to plan or goes wrong, you know how to exit the building safely. Stay safe and please enjoy the webinar. So my career started in the end of '96 when I graduated in petroleum engineering from Imperial College in London. And over the years I've had a very exciting career in Shell. I'd like to share a bit more with you about that. So I started with my corporate training in the Netherlands. I then went to what we call our Round 1 Certificate of Competence. This is our global competence assurance program for our well engineering staff. I passed through that and spent a couple of years in the North Sea. I then achieved my second stage of competence assurance, known as the Round 2, and moved to Bangladesh, where I managed an offshore operation in the Bay of Bengal. I then moved to the Deepwater Group, based out of Houston, but working on exciting projects in the Gulf of Mexico, Egypt, Nigeria, and the Philippines, so a truly international assignment. I then did what we call in Wells a broadening assignment. That's where I take my technical skills and apply them to another part of our business, thereby helping that side of the business, but also developing my own personal skill set. This time in business planning and economics in our global team in the Netherlands, pulling together our exploration and production business plan. I then moved to Shell's and Sakhalin Energy's mega Phase 2 project, initially in the Netherlands and then in Eastern Russia, to help deliver what's known as the Piltoon development, that platform in the top right-hand corner of my screen. Initially as a well engineer, getting the platform ready for operations and doing all the well design work, but then as another broadening assignment as a field development team lead, so managing geologists and reservoir engineers and many other disciplines to help achieve first oil and the production ramp-up of this development. I then moved to the US as the drilling engineering manager for our platforms in the Gulf of Mexico until I moved to my new and current assignment as the general manager for well operations. So I manage all drilling, completion and intervention operations for our platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. When I talk about deep water within Shell, I talk about a truly global business. We're located all over the world, centered around, at the moment at least, around 4 main hubs. The Gulf of Mexico, based in New Orleans and Houston, and obviously offshore, Brazil, Nigeria, and also Malaysia and Brunei. Each of these hub areas has projects on stream and also projects under development or under construction. So for instance, in Malaysia, we have the Gumasut development that's just achieved first oil and continues to be worked, but also the Malakai development, which is under construction. In each of these areas and also many other parts of the world, we also have an interesting and exciting exploration portfolio where we help to continue to drive the deepwater business and maintain our global reach within Shell. Zooming in to give you an idea of what one of these deepwater projects looks like, I've selected two examples of projects I've been personally connected with. The first is Perdido. This is a deep water spa in the Gulf of Mexico, and give you an indication of what I mean by deep water. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you see that this platform is located in almost 8,000 feet of water. So if they were hovering over Houston, this is what it would look like thanks to one of our artists. Quite an achievement. And when we first installed this platform, Shell broke a number of records, such as deepest drilling and production system, deepest spa, deepest subsea well, both within Shell and also within the industry. That gave the team connected with this an enormous sense of pride and self-satisfaction. And also, this development continues to be worked to this day. We've got many more wells to drill, lots of exciting challenges ahead of us, but adding a lot of value for Shell and also the wider community. The next development I'll talk about is known as Mars B. This is a combined subsea and platform development in the Gulf of Mexico, centered around the Olympus tension leg platform. In the top left, you see the drilling package being made ready to put onto the platform. And if you move around counterclockwise, you'll see the platform sailing out of the shipyard. Then on location next to its sister platform, the Mars platform. And the top picture is an indication of some of the global reach we have with many of our projects. So when we achieved first subsea oil and its development, it was flashed around newswires around the world and even made it to Times Square in New York. Every project member was very excited about this, and it was an opportunity for them to show their friends and families what they do for a living. And that, trust me, put a lot of smiles on a lot of faces. I'd like to switch gear a little bit now and move away from our projects, but how we work within Shell. And this is applicable in deep water and any other part of our business. It's about collaboration. It's about leveraging the top talent within our organization, both offshore and onshore, experts in different hub centers, field professionals on our rigs, making sure that we work together to achieve success and tackle any challenges that we may face. And a key part of that is our real-time operations capability. So at any time, we can see downhole data from our rigs at the same time as we see it in our offices. Our experts get to look at the same data as our field professionals through the same lens, so they truly can work together as one big team. It's a very satisfying way of working, and it's helping us to achieve excellent success in many parts of our business. But the collaboration doesn't stop within Shell. In the areas of safety, Shell will work with other industry partners to make the wider industry as safe as possible and improve our process safety capability. One example is the Subsea Well Response Project. So in the Gulf of Mexico now, through the Marine Well Containment Company, the Gulf of Mexico has access to capping stacks and other equipment to help us deal with any emergency situations in which a blowout preventer is not functioning correctly. We want to make sure we have the same capability across the globe. So for that reason, we built up this project together with many others in the industry. And now we have 4 capping stacks and other equipment that can be deployed anywhere, transportable by sea or air from one of our locations around the world. So really helping to make a difference in the wider industry. My final 2 slides, I'd like to talk a little bit about the future. So we've got great people, we've got great projects, we're looking for further great people to join our team. But we want to make sure those people have the right tools for the job so they can really achieve the success that we also desperately want, and we will achieve that. So to do this, we have a bunch of new drill ships coming into our portfolio. Here's one example of a drill ship that leverages new technology. It's called the Bully Rig System, that developed together with the Noble Drilling Corporation. It has a new technical design of derrick called a multi-purpose tower that's helping this particular rig be very capable but have a smaller footprint, hence a more efficient drilling operation that can be deployed wherever we need it within our portfolio. We actually have 2 of these rigs commissioned and operating now, and they've achieved a lot of success both down in Brazil and the Gulf of Mexico. But we are still pushing the envelope in deep water, so we need even greater capability. So we've teamed up with Transocean to deliver 4 new drill ships. These take our water depth capability to 12,000 feet. They leverage a lot of new technology and a lot of improvements such as dual activity drilling, which essentially is 2 derricks working side by side to make things more efficient. They're also equipped with the very latest blowout preventers to help us maintain well control. But we also are looking at the future. So the industry is now pushing to the next level of 20,000 psi capable blowout preventers. That's not in place yet, but we know it's coming, so we've made sure the design of these drill ships is such that we can leverage that new technology when it's available. This concludes my presentation about the exciting things we have done, continue to do, and will continue to do in the future within Shell. I'd now like to hand back to Bertie, who will continue the discussion.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. And now we'll hear from Melissa.
Thank you. As Bertie mentioned, my name is Melissa Morris, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about some of the exciting opportunities that we have in our onshore environment as well. So to begin with a little bit about myself, I started my career in 2007 after graduating with my mechanical engineering degree from Michigan State University. And while I was in university, I did 2 internships with Shell, so one was in our onshore and one was in our offshore environments. When I hired on full-time in 2007, I started out as a completions and well interventions engineer in our South Texas group. So a couple years later, that asset got sold, and I moved over as a completions engineer into our new Texas asset, which was called the Eagle Ford. 2011, I too did a broadening role, like Malcolm mentioned, and what I did is I went into, it was called our TOGS team, and what that stands for is Transforming the Onshore Supply Chain. And it was a joint project between our contracting and procurement group, our wells group, and our finance group. And what we were looking at is how do you really get value out of what at the time was a very tight supply market. During that time, I also did my round 1, so the first half of the fundamental engineering training. And then after completing that, in 2013, I moved back into the Eagle Ford to do what's called an operations team lead role. Used to be called, maybe more familiar to some of you, as a superintendent role. And in that role, it allows me to manage safety, to manage the execution of the operations in the field, and then to manage the field staff. So in 2013, I also completed law school. I've been going to law school part-time at the University of Houston. So I completed that program and took the Texas State Bar. And then in 2014, in addition to the operations team lead role, I picked up the engineering team lead role. And what this really means is that it allows me to manage not just engineers and the folks in the field, but the planning and execution of operations. Throughout all of that, one of the other exciting opportunities that I had was to organize and then attend the Global Wells Conference in Kuala Lumpur, which is where I was able to snap some of the photos that you can see in the background. And the Global Wells Conferences are something that we do internally every couple of years, and it allows us to leverage the fact that we are a global company and we have people across the board. So we do these internal conferences, which are presentations, networking events, and we really focus on both best practice sharing and how we manage and transition learnings from one asset to another. So let's talk a little bit, what do I mean when I say we have a global portfolio? So what you can see here are the various onshore locations that we have, and you can see we're very diverse, and we're in a variety of socio-political environments. And what this means is that we're constantly exploring for new property and focusing on developing our existing property. So no matter where you're at or where you want to go, there will always be opportunities for us. So what might you do in these various roles? So one thing that you might work on in an operations team lead role would be focusing, of course, on safety. And how do we make our operations both safer and more efficient? And one way that we're doing this is through the use of automation. And automation, the beauty of automation is it allows us to remove those errors that are inherent in human decision making. And 2 of the systems that we currently use and that you may have heard about are called SCADA and DART. And what these are real-time systems that allow for the real-time acquisition of data. It's a standardized package. You can put it on, say, a drilling rig. You get real-time data, you can get instantaneous analysis, and then feedback, and the system will automatically adjust the drilling parameters to help you increase your efficiencies. So this system has been used to improve our operations across the board, from Europe to the US to Malaysia, Turkey, Nigeria, everywhere. Another way that software development is being used within our industry is tying back to something that Malcolm mentioned in terms of the blowout preventers, or BOPs, which are your main methods of well control. So if we look at the way in onshore that we've done BOP testing, it's basically unchanged for the last 100 years. So we're using 100-year-old technology in the form of chart recorders, a rig crew manually operating valves, and then notes, right? We document the test. So what we can do is, through some fit-for-purpose type software and instrumentation, is actually go back and retrofit these BOPs to fully automate the entire process. So this is something still in development, but of course, if you come and if you see Shell, things that you will continue to see developing. And all this is focused on how do we eliminate that exposure to hazards and make sure that our business is safer. So what's one role that you might work as either, say, an engineer or something that I worked in a broadening assignment in my supply chain role? And that was really, how do we minimize our footprint? So something that we're very focused on is how do we minimize the environmental impact that we make as a result of our activities? And one way that we're doing this is through the use of pad drilling. And what pad drilling is where you drill multiple wells from the same surface location. And that, again, allows you to minimize your environmental footprint. Another way that we do this is through what we call simultaneous operations, or SIMOPs, which is where you do multiple activities on the same location at the same time. So you might be drilling one well and fracturing another or producing another, all in the same physical location. And what this means is that we reduce the amount of time that we're on site, and we reduce the amount of time that we're impacting the environment. Another interesting project that had heavy involvement from both our engineers and our field staff is a pretty neat project up in Carmen Creek, which is in Alberta, Canada. And what they've done is there's a new challenge there. So in Carmen Creek, they're going to be drilling something like 50 well pads. And the challenge is, how do you take a conventional rig, which typically is drill one well, pick up and move, drill a second well, pick up and move, and keep drilling? How do you take that concept and really modernize it to where you can take the efficiencies of an existing system, break it all apart, put it back together, and figure out what it is that you need that system to do in this new environment? And so what they have created, it's a custom-built, they're called drilling machines, that allow them to efficiently drill 50 well pads to where they would be delivering one well every couple of days. And the way they've done that is by preserving some of the existing structures, so the mast, the derrick, the main parts of the rig, and then adding features to ensure delivery in an optimal fashion. So shared backyard, which is all the external equipment, multi-well slots, and a variety of other techniques that will allow us to get that optimization that we're looking for. And again, none of this could happen without some smart people and some really good involvement across the board in an integrated fashion, making sure that we can come up with a design, deliver it, execute it, and then build and run it in the field. Finally, something else you might work at, and this was a great integrated project, so engineers were involved, our field operations, and our contracting and procurement groups. I'm focused at how do we, again, reduce our environmental impact through a variety of ways. It's not just early life, where we're talking about the pre-drilling. It extends all the way into the completions and production side. And what you see here is an image of where we actually converted some engines that typically pump, they're used to pump the hydraulic fractures, and they run on diesel. And what we were doing is we were converting them to run on natural gas, and in this case, LNG. And what you see in the photo is the dock test, and it was the original test of why we were doing this. And the reason that we wanted to do this is because it not only means less emissions, it means less ambient noise, the engines actually run quieter, and it also means less fuel is being used to perform the same operation. So this was one example. One of our Canadian drilling rigs was also converted to run on natural gas. And there are currently some projects underway that are taking it one step further and actually looking at using the engines and running them on the gas that's produced from the well itself. So you can take the feedstock right out of what you're producing and recycle that in order to use it to power the next set of operations. Finally, something that extends throughout the operation, and Malcolm mentioned it in deep water, you'll see it throughout onshore, is how do we focus on making our operations safer? And this isn't just something that's limited to the field. You as an engineer would be heavily involved in this. And the reason is a lot of people tend to focus on how do you minimize the harm that comes from a hazard. And we've said that doesn't make any sense. How do we eliminate the hazard in the first place? And so what we call that is engineering out the hazard. What you can see in this photo is one example of how we've partnered with a local high school group to develop a unique solution to a barrier that doesn't always stay in the same place, right? So what happens when your hazard moves? What happens when it's a truck and it drives around location and it changes its position every hour? How do you set up barriers, and how do you keep yourself from being injured through that hazard? And so this is one example of what the group came up with, and it was called RFID, or radio frequency tagging, where you could actually keep a tag between the person or the hazards on site and the moving object. So no matter what the operation is, no matter where you're located at in the company, whether you're in the field or whether you're in the office, trying to make our operations safer at every step of the process is something that you'll be working on, whether onshore, offshore, or anywhere in between. Bertie, back to you.
Thank you, Melissa. And at this point, we'll hear from Kim, who is joining us from the Netherlands.
Thank you, Bertie, and a good day or evening or afternoon to those of you listening in on the webinar. So as Bertie mentioned, my name is Kim Karaski. I'm a wells engineering manager for completions and well interventions here in the Netherlands. So currently it's a fantastic rainy evening here, so apologies if you hear the storm. I started my career sharing a little bit. I was born and raised in Venezuela, and I started my career, I hired into a service company in 2001. So I joined the service company in Aberdeen, and I was a cementing engineer. And I spent a few years offshore working on the rigs before moving into an office role where I offered customer support as a desk engineer, as it was known and still is known these days from the company. After a while, I took the decision to move to Shell. I had the opportunity, and I chose to do something different, which was to enter the completions and well interventions world. So I joined Shell as a completions and well interventions engineer. I worked offshore in Aberdeen for a few years before also, like my colleagues, doing a broadening assignment. So I spent some time working here in the Netherlands in Rijswijk, in our center, as a performance improvement consultant. And this was a truly special broadening assignment because it really gave me a global view of Shell as a business. So I worked in projects in Malaysia and Brunei and Oman, in Norway, in Houston, as well as New Orleans. And essentially it's working with teams and how to derive the maximum value and get the actions and the projects ongoing. It was also a very exciting time. We were at that time implementing a subsea technology and where we wanted to go as a group for subsea technology. So there was a lot of great work and involvement there. So after my assignment, during that assignment, I also completed my round 1 and round 2 exams as my colleagues have, and as all well engineers do here in Shell. I returned to Aberdeen to work in a high temperature, high pressure project. Where the challenges were, aside from just the technical challenges, it's our world was changing from stakeholder perspective. So it had a lot to do with managing the stakeholders around us, the regulators, working with the regulators to make sure that what our practices were well understood and sound. And it was coming up with the technical solutions. When you're working in that environment, is working the pressures and the temperatures and the testing of the equipment, and developing new systems and technologies for the completion side, particularly on a material side, to ensure that we could have something that could withstand the design life. During that time as well, I took some time out. I took a break to become a mum. And then when I returned, I also did a further few years in the team before moving here to the Netherlands, to Assen. So it was in the north of the Netherlands. It's a very, very well established asset or area for Shell. It's extremely diverse. So we have work, we have subsea work, we have platform work, and we have land work, and in many, many degrees of complexity. It's a mature area that's had quite a journey in learning, and in wells in particular on land, the approach was to really look at how we design our wells. And the way we design our wells is that we really looked at what we really needed and what was really fit for purpose, aside and set aside all of our previous paradigms of how wells were previously designed. And as this component came through, we also worked with the rig contractors to design a purpose-built rig. And that's how we developed our slim scheme and light land rig concept. This concept has now served us for several years. It has really made quite an impact. Like my colleagues have mentioned, it's also focused from a safety perspective in removing people from harm's way. So we focus around removing the hazards. So drilling automation is and operations, and automation and operations is one of the key things that was looked at the time. When I arrived here in the area, I arrived in a team lead role, and the role was to deliver the same success that was delivered on land and translated to offshore. So this project had been working, and it was a multidisciplinary team, and it was really looking at the whole concept and how could we really implement our SLIM scheme, the work we did with the SLIM scheme wells on land offshore. So this involved a purpose-built rig, the Swift rig, which was also quite an innovation, designed really, really fit for purpose for a very, very specific portfolio of work that we do. It involved a huge design work that was looked at from a topsides perspective, from a subsurface perspective. And the intention really essentially is to get to the smaller pools of gas that are no longer economic to be reached otherwise with new facilities or new surface facilities or installations. Essentially, we end up with subsea wells, a single subsea wells tied back to the platform. And unlike Malcolm in the deep water business, our water here is relatively shallow. So we have the other end of the spectrum in terms of the challenge with 30 meters of water alone. So it's a project that's been very close to my heart because I've followed it through my progression here as well. So during my time as a team lead, I managed the operations of our first 3 wells with our engineers. And now as a manager, I look at how we implement everything that we've learned through the teams to get success in our next portfolio of sweep wells. So the other thing I would like to tell, I wanted to kind of bring it in is in a personal context. And, you know, as engineers who come in and they've been through their round 1 and they've been through their round 2, and the delivery of the work that they do. And what it's like, you know, so we had a purpose-built system, a purpose-built rig, very sophisticated, which we had tested, which we had designed, and in practice, and you know, and how we manage the operation in practice, and how, you know, the 2 a.m. calls happened when things didn't always go to plan, considering it's the first time, and it's a very energizing and exciting time. The beauty of doing something for the first time is that the organization has given us the space to learn, and it's given us the space to stop and regroup, as we had to do in many occasions, to be able to come up with the optimum solution. And the energy now behind the team is, having been through this a year ago, we're now preparing for a second campaign next year. We've had almost 2 years to prepare all the changes and optimizations that we would like to make to continue the learning curve so that we can implement it on the batches. So that's a little bit about the story. And really, I also wanted to just mention that it's not always about when you execute a project flawlessly that you've done. And it's also about learning when you go, keeping people safe, eliminating the hazards, and bringing that hazard elimination to really early in the design stage, so that when we are in execution, it's really the technical focus and performance that we're able to deliver. And with that, I hand back to you, Bertie.
Thank you so much, Kim. As we move into the panel discussion part of our program, I did want to remind our audience that you can submit questions for our panelists at any time during our discussion. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can toward the end of the program. To start, the first question is for all of you, and Kim, we'll start with you. Can you each discuss a little bit about why you like your current role so much at Shell? Kim?
The diversity, the diversity of the role and the diversity of our team. At the moment, we have a team with, I think we have more than 9 or 10 nationalities in the team. It's a great energy that we get from the group. It's the diversity of the work is we really have subsea, high pressure, high temperature. So we have a portfolio that we really are able to grow in here in the NAM. And really the best satisfaction that I get from my role at the moment is to see, you know, our engineers who do the work for the first time and to really see them grow, and really start delivering in the excellence that we're able to see. And that, I have to say, is my favorite part, is to see my engineers grow.
Melissa?
What I love about my current role, and really every role that I've had at Shell, is there is no answer in the back of the book. So something a little different than school where there was that right answer and it was just about getting there. There is no right answer for us, and the technology is continually evolving. I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have the technology in the shale plays and what we look at in certainly the deep water environment. It's just a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle to find the best thing and to figure out what's best for the company. And so every day when you come in, it's a bit different challenge. Don't always know what's going to come across the plate. And so we focus and we use that multidiscipline team that Kim mentioned, and we use the vast resources that we have and our technical experts to really figure out what is it that we can do today to make things safer, to make sure that our people come home at night, and to make sure that what we're doing adds value into the overall portfolio.
Malcolm?
And from my perspective, it's about the people. So we have the backdrop of some really excellent world-class projects, but my role is about making sure we get the right people together, help them develop their skills and leverage the experience of the wider team and the wider organization to deliver these projects. It's not about me doing everything myself. It's about really relying on the team and seeing the team develop and the people develop their careers, their personalities, just the excitement they have every day they come to work. That to me is very rewarding. And ultimately, it's just fun. I actually enjoy every day when I come to work. I don't have like so many we see on TV of, oh no, I have to go to work today. Every day is fun and exciting. I very much enjoy that aspect.
That's fantastic. Melissa, can you talk a little bit about the training for wells engineers that happens at Shell?
You heard all of us, I think, mentioned round one and round two. So we can talk a little bit more about that, what that means. So for all of our hires, whether they are new hires or experienced hires, there's a program. It's called round one and round two. And what it is it's a program that consists of multiple parts, and it's really designed to develop and then demonstrate your competencies as an engineer. It's not specific to onshore or offshore, and what happens is you get a big set of binders. We're now modernizing that, and it's also included in like an iPad format. But what you do is you do some background learning on your own. So there's binders, or there's reading materials, there's quizzes, there's face-to-face classes, and then all that culminates with an actual written exam, which you must get a minimum score to pass and pass your round one. There's also a field component where you go in and do a field assignment. Typically around a year or so, where you're in the field actually working with the operations staff. Then you come back and you further your learning through another program, which is round two. So all said and done, generally it's about a 3 to 5 year development. For the experienced hires, because we want to take advantage of the fact that they have some significant industry experience, there's a slightly modified version, which is called the round one and round two diploma. But it's aimed at showing the same competencies, just in a little bit accelerated path, because they're coming in with some existing knowledge.
Okay, this next question is for all of you again. Malcolm, we'll start with you. What are your aspirations for your next role?
That's a very good question. For me, it's to continue to be challenged. I love to stretch my development and my skills, but every day I want to come to work and really enjoy myself and feel like I'm adding value. And so what's the next role? Well, I can't go into too many specifics, because if you'd asked me this question in 1996, I would have given an answer, and it was my career has been completely different ever since, and every day has been exciting and a new challenge. So for me, it's more about the challenge of that particular role and make sure I continue to enjoy it and add value for myself and the company.
Melissa?
Very similar comments as Malcolm made. Same thing in that the most important thing to me is getting a good challenge and getting something that's exciting and that you can continue to innovate and feel part of that team and feel like you're really helping to drive change. So for me personally, I've been heavily involved in more of the operations and the engineering side. And so something that I'd like to take away, and thanks to the mentors and some of the other support groups that we have at Shell have recommended, is maybe looking more at some of the business side. So how do we get into maybe some of the strategy or planning or looking at our business and our portfolio from a more financial side than from the operation side.
And Kim, what are your thoughts on your next role?
So my first role will be my impending maternity leave. But when I return, it's indeed, you know, it's very similar to Malcolm. If I had to map my career and how I thought it would go, and the pace that I thought it would go, even 5 years ago, I'm not sure I would have mapped that I would be here where I am now. But it's what drives me, you know. It's what drives me to be a full-time working mom, and really the challenges with the people and the strategy and the work and adding value and seeing the results as well, you know, and the fact that we're able to implement things in such short time periods. Yeah, it's based really along having a role that challenges me and continues to motivate me as the one I have now does.
Okay. My next question, Malcolm, is for you. It's related to impact. I know a lot of people hope at some point in their careers to really be able to make an impact within the company that they're working for, especially a lot of young people who are thinking about coming into the industry. Can you discuss an impact that you feel you've made while at Shell?
Of course. We're fortunate because we work on so many different projects. We as part of a wider team do see ourselves in every project we work on. I'll use one example, the Piltoon development that I mentioned in Sakhalin. As the development team lead, working together with a multidisciplinary team from wells, from subsurface, we were charged with achieving first oil in a very difficult working environment in the far eastern side of Russia. New technology, new development, harsh weather conditions, really a major challenge. And we worked together, we leveraged what global expertise we had within Shell, which is pretty sizable amount, and really brought this together and made decisions. I made personal decisions, our team made decisions that helped us navigate this and achieve first oil as we intended at the end of a particular year. And that, when we saw that first oil, it was so exciting for everybody. Everybody really felt I was a part of that, and it's something I still look back at this to this day, and get my own personal satisfaction from it, and I know my colleagues feel the same way. And something I can show my friends and family, hey, I was a part of that. I helped deliver that. And that, to me, is a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, that sounds like something you don't forget. That's wonderful. Kim, can you talk a little bit about how your team is structured and then also how you develop your team?
Yes, so I'm one of the managers on a front-end design team for wells here in NAM. So essentially we keep our 4 land rigs running and 2 offshore rigs and a hoist, and we do all the front-end design work for that. So as a manager, I stay with a project from when it's selected to come forward up until the detailed design is completed. And then within us, we have a series of team leads, and working for the team leads, we have our engineers. So each team lead has a part of the portfolio, both within well engineering and completions and well interventions. So it's a very integrated team. We get the engineers after they have done the round 2 exam and they've done their field assignment and their field time, and it's typically their first assignment in the office. So they've completed kind of the first part of their development, and now it's putting into practice everything that they've learned. But more than putting into practice everything that they've learned, it's also starting to really focus on their leadership development and how they integrate within the teams, within the broader multidisciplinary teams that we're working with in Shell. And we do that through targeted training, but it becomes a lot about, in Shell, it's about leaders developing leaders. And so I have a personal accountability to ensure that the behaviors and that the support is in place for my team leads and for the engineers to continue developing their career and actually then starting to build their longer term career plans beyond their round 2 certification, which is what we've got.
Melissa, this next one is for you. Obviously, Shell is a very large global organization. Can you talk a little bit about how you are connected with colleagues in other locations and skill pools?
So the beauty of again, being the global organization is, yes, we have people across the globe, and I think you're seeing one today. So certainly even internally, we use the variety of internet-based communications. We have the video conferencing, But we do more than that, right? So something I mentioned earlier was our global WELS conferences, which are, I reference to WELS, but certainly happen across the board, which is where we actually send everybody to a particular location and discuss, have presentations on what is it that you're working on, what are some of the best practices, what are some of the learnings. So we've got, besides just organized conferences, we also have a lot of internal networks. So we use a lot of things that would be, it's called Yammer. We use a lot of other internet-based activities. And then we have message boards, discussion boards. Of course, we have email, and then we have a lot of what's also called common interest networks, which is where you have a variety of folks, say maybe working on engineering out hazards, that meet on a regular basis to talk about what they're working on and come up with ideas to improve. So we've got a lot of different systems that are out there to support. It's not just one-on-one communication and making sure you have a contact over in Malaysia. There's a lot of external support that will help you develop those relationships. There's also, if you don't know anyone, right, there's also a lot of, say, new professionals networks that can help you meet people in different areas. And we also have a full network of technical experts, so principal technical experts or subject matter experts that can also help you make those connections in different areas if you're looking for a particular technical item.
Okay, and Kim, to kind of keep with that theme of connection, can you talk a little bit about your connections with coaches and mentors within Shell?
Yeah, so personally, in different stages of my career, I've had different coaches and mentors. My mentor has always been Houston-based, actually, and I've always been Europe-based. So we established an introduction separately, and she's been my mentor for the last 7 years. And it depends on the relationship that you need, but I think and for our engineers as well. We encourage that in different stages of their career that they make the connection with the right mentors and the right coaches, and they make the distinction of what a coach or a mentor would do and how that drives essentially. But likewise with Melissa, it's a very global thing. So yeah, and it becomes also for me, it's been a very personal friendship as well over the years.
Malcolm, can you talk a little bit about how your ideas have traveled within the organization while at Shell?
Yes, of course. So I've worked in various parts of the Shell organization, and every place I've worked in has actually touched me in some way, and it's actually helped me formulate and develop my ideas. So every time I move to a new location, I take a little bit of previous locations with me to really leverage the best of each place to help us improve and continually improve. It's not just me though, it's a global way of working that we have within Shell. So Shell is getting better and better at really leveraging the global talent we have across the planet, be it in Asia, be it in the Americas, be it in Europe, through real-time operations, through global networks. We start to formulate ideas on a global basis. We leverage the best the globe has to offer, and that helps us achieve success in the many projects that we have. So really, the company and the globe are helping form me and my ideas, and I'm helping carry the globe's ideas around with me.
Okay, and to follow on that, so during your time at Shell, what have you discovered about yourself or your profession?
I've discovered that how much the sheer importance of leadership, and it's something that I enjoy personally, leading and dealing with people and working with people. It's how I can really help the company and projects achieve the utmost value by leveraging the diverse talent that we've got within the organization. Many places people work on a specific problem and they solve the specific problem themselves, but I've seen the power of bringing together these diverse opinions, funneling it all together through a final decision to make sure that we corral all those good ideas has helped me see and achieve enormous success in projects around the world. So really it's leveraging. I'm much better at leveraging our diverse talent. I've improved my leadership skills, both through actually practicing and working with teams, but also looking at our global leaders within Shell. We've got some excellent leadership in Shell, and through our coaching and mentoring program, they've helped me by imparting their ideas and their experiences to me, that then I can look at how do I fit into that? How can I leverage or not those particular skills?
It sounds like an environment where you can definitely continue to evolve. This next one is for both Melissa and Malcolm. How would you both describe your team and also what the group has achieved together in the time that you've been working together? And Melissa, we'll start with you.
So one of the most interesting teams that I worked on, I mentioned, was the TOGS team, or the Transformation of the Supply Chain team. And the way that team was built is it was built of 3 different groups. So there was someone from Wells, there was someone from our finance groups, and then someone from our contracting and procurement group. And then we were all supported by the various organizations. I mean, what made that very, very interesting is that you had a diverse group, a small group, but a diverse group that was looking at trying to change the supply chain from end to end. So not just, how do we go out and find vendors, what do those contracts look like, but all the way through to the operations phase of, hey, once they're in the field, how do we manage them? How do we ensure that we get the performance we need? And so what it allowed us to do is to take people who, as Malcolm mentioned, instead of having people that are very specialized in their area, getting everybody together and coming up with some unique solutions that really helped us drive value out of the full chain. And some of the very interesting things that we worked on, actually one of which I mentioned, was the conversion of engines over to run on natural gas, which sounds like a very technical project, except you get in and you say, well, where do the engines come from and how do we convert and how do we manage that and make sure that we have the right fuel supply in our regions? And then they run different in the field. So how do we onboard field staff and make sure that we can actually ensure continuous supply of fuel in the field? And so being able to see a project that started out as something of an idea, in a room from some of our senior leaders of, hey, this is something that we think is potentially very valuable for us and for the environment. And taking that all the way through to the implementation phase and actually being able to go out and visit, and see the engine running on the natural gas is very rewarding. And I think that you'll see that with a lot of the projects that you can work on here at Shell, is that you get to work in those diverse teams and you'll work with people from very different backgrounds that have different ideas. And together you're going to take maybe a small project, maybe a big project, but deliver it all the way through the food chain.
Malcolm?
My team is first of all, quite a cast of characters and lots of interesting personalities, and that makes it fun at work. But if I look at them, try to put them into give a few words to characterize the overall team, I think driven to succeed is one aspect I'd look at. Everybody wants to do the best they possibly can, and they want to achieve success. And the other aspect I'd highlight is care. Everyone cares about each other, and it's maybe not the word people immediately leap to when we talk about offshore platforms, but when I go offshore, everybody there cares about me. Am I okay? They care about each other, whether they're Shell people, contract company staff. People truly care about each other. They care about society and they care about the environment. And that to me is a key aspect of it. Care and a drive to succeed.
Melissa, another question for you. When you think about your career journey and the development that you've encountered along the way, one, would you have done anything differently? And then conversely, what would you probably do or want to experience the same way if you had a choice?
Like Kim and Malcolm both mentioned, if you had asked me 3 or 4 years ago, maybe what my next role was or what my career might look like, I would have given a very different answer. And so would I have done anything different? No. I can say that for sure, because everything that I've done and every step that I took has brought me here and brought me to the opportunities that I have today. I think the biggest piece of advice I have with that is really it's about knowing your own strengths and weaknesses and being upfront and being clear about those and saying, hey, look, this is where I think I'm good and this is where I really want to develop. And using all of those kind of resources and networks and coaches and mentors around you to help you fill that in. So the hardest part about coming into a new company is we're a large company. There's so many opportunities, and it's constantly changing, right? And so to know, what opportunity is primed to fit those areas that I want to develop, and that's where really a lot of the support comes in, to have people help you find those opportunities that are really going to push you and stretch you and find a way to develop you into that stronger leader and develop some of those skills and talents that maybe you didn't even know that you had. So for me, what I would say is really it's about keeping an open mind. It's about being self-aware and reflecting on what your skills are, and then really being open to those opportunities and jumping on them. Don't take it or turn it down just because it doesn't sound quite right. Find out about it, find out what the opportunities are, and really just be willing to take a chance.
Excellent. Thank all of you. That's all great information and really a perfect lead-in for our audience Q&A portion. As we have been chatting, we've had quite a few questions come in, so we'll jump right in here. the first question is, what advice do you have for young and upcoming engineers? Malcolm, we can start with you.
I think Melissa has highlighted some of that. It's when opportunities come, embrace them. So when an opportunity is presented to you, be it opportunities within Shell or once inside of Shell, opportunities to take a new assignment, don't tell yourself, oh, I'm not sure if that's right for me, or I can't do it, it's something new. No, talk to people, get to find out more about it, then just embrace it. I've done that all the way through my career. Opportunities have appeared out of nowhere, completely from left field, to use the American expression. And I've grabbed it, I've seized upon it, and I've enjoyed every moment ever since. So really, seize the day, I think, is probably the best way to characterize it.
Our next question is, what is the decision-making process that you work with, and how did you get a managing position in such a short time? Kim, I know you walked through kind of how you moved through the ladder. We'll give that one to you.
So I think a key aspect is what Melissa mentioned, and yes, indeed, it is in a short time, and it has been an interesting time as well, and I think really the big thing is to understand where you need to grow, without forgetting what you're good at, and to continue to do what you're good at. It's what Malcolm said, it's opportunities as well. There is an aspect of being at the right place at the right time as well. And it's really using the coaching and the mentoring, and that's been such a key role for me, you know, and it's really being able to strip your ego back and take time and get the feedback of when something didn't go well or what you could be doing better, and understanding really what it is that you need to kind of deliver in the business. So I've just started my journey as a manager. And you know, and it is growth as well, and it's accepting that you will make mistakes, and that it's not about the mistakes that you make, but it's about how you recover from them, how you learn from them, and how you prove to yourself that you've learned from them. So those are really the key things. And then the other main aspect is that, of course, we are in a business, and it's about delivery and demonstrating delivery, and you know, so really clear conversations on what the targets are, what you need to achieve, and a personal understanding of what you would need to do to exceed those targets.
Okay. For this next question, we'll go around to everyone, I think. One of our listeners would like to know, at what age did you decide to get into oil and gas? Kim, we can start with you and go around.
I'm a civil engineer by background. I always thought I'd be in the construction industry. So I really, although I come from a family of people who have been in the oil industry for many years and retired from it, I never really contemplated it until, like Malcolm says, the opportunity presented itself, and it seemed like a good idea at the time, and it was. So no, it's not something that I directly thought I'd get into, and I'm very grateful that I fell upon it, because I couldn't imagine having more fun anywhere else.
Melissa, when did you know that you wanted to get into oil and gas?
I laugh a little bit the same story. So I grew up in Michigan, which, if you're not familiar, Michigan is kind of birthplace of automotive. So as a mechanical engineer in Michigan, I just assumed that I would end up somewhere in automotive. So I decided to go work for an oil and gas company when I was 19, and about 3 seconds before I saw Shell at our career fair. So it was another one of those where I was out looking for opportunities for summer internships, and I happened to walk up and they told me more in line with the, hey, you don't always know what opportunities are going to sound interesting. The person that I talked to was fantastic, and the opportunities and the things that they worked on just really excited me. So I said, why not? Let's take the internship, and years later, here I am.
And Malcolm, what about you?
And myself, well, my first degree was in aeronautical engineering, so a bit of a departure in London, and destination was probably going to be the military or maybe the aerospace industry. And then a conversation and a job application with another company, not Shell, got me talking about the oil industry and seriously thinking about it. And I like what I saw. It's an exciting industry, it's a global industry, and which other industry has such a connection with everything from politics through to engineering? I just got excited, so I took my master's program, and then had the opportunity to interview with a number of different companies, and I liked the way Shell presented themselves and the opportunities available in this global company. I thought, great, this is a fit for me. This achieves what I want in life. So I was around 22 years old when that kind of came to the fore.
Young. Melissa, you mentioned internships. One of the questions that's come in is, what do interns mostly get to be involved in if they get an internship at Shell?
So interns are involved in anything that a full-time employee would do. So the way that the internship typically works in Wells is it's generally, call it 12 to 14 weeks. And the Wells team, so in my team, say we had an intern last year, and we'll take one of the projects that needs to be worked on, that normally I would hand to one of the full-time engineers, and we'll carve it out and we'll say, look, this is going to be our intern project. So we'll actually put it on hold and wait until the intern shows up. So some of the past, one of the projects that I worked on was in our plug-in abandonments. So when a well is finished, you actually have to go back and abandon it and restore its condition. So I was tasked with basically looking at costs that were too high and activities that didn't seem very efficient. Dig through the regulations, find out what it is we need to do and develop a plan, and then make a recommendation for how we can do these at lower cost, more efficient and safer. So that was a real project. I actually, when I hired back in full-time, came right back around and started on that project again. But some of the other ones are looking at new ways of lining pipe, or looking at failures that we've had and trying to come up with a solution. So we do try to come up with a project that somebody that doesn't have any background can come in, they can learn, we can get them up to speed, and they can take a project and actually come and walk away and say, here's what I did.
That's exciting. I know with some internships it may not be quite so hands-on, but this sounds like real-world stuff that interns would get to deal with at Shell. Our next question is dealing with work-life balance. What are your views about work-life balance, and how is this balance within a Shell well engineering job? Malcolm?
Work-life balance is a very important part of how our careers within Shell. Family is extremely important, and I reiterate that to all of our team members around the world. Someone once asked me, what's my favorite job? It's actually being a dad. I love working for Shell, I love every opportunity I've had in Shell, but I love being a father most, and I have the time to do that. We have flexible working arrangements. We leverage our IT to enable people to complete work at home if necessary, spend time with their families, and we do re-emphasize this on a regular basis and make sure that people take the time to enjoy life outside of work, because that is what Shell's about. It's about the people, and it's making sure the people are cared for, and part of that is ensuring they have a good work-life balance. There are times when we do work a few extra hours, that does happen, but we make sure that we restore the balance and maybe take a bit more time off. So it's always an ongoing discussion, but it is important to us.
Okay. For the role that we've been discussing, one of our listeners would like to know, how would you define the ratio of technical expertise and management expertise that's really required for the job, or any other essential skill sets that you would recommend in order to really be strong in the role? Melissa?
I think that depends on what your role is and where it is at the time. So when I think of my role as an engineer, it was a bit more focused on the technical development, and that was just a bit more natural as you're coming in, you're learning. Now, even as an engineer, though, the thing to manage is that you're still going to be managing things and developing those leadership skills. And even if you may not have that direct authority or maybe that title that goes along with it, your job is to make sure you're planning and executing operations and actually delivering them in the field. So you play a bit of a project manager role. And then you're also integrating with the other disciplines. So it's not just wells, right? We don't just work in isolation. We get our information from the subsurface teams. We get our information, we work closely with drilling, we work closely with a variety of people in order to be able to deliver that business. So while you're working your project, you're developing some of those influencing, strategic thinking, those type of leadership skills. Now, as I moved into a management role, of course that changes a bit. It becomes a bit less technical, because we have great technical folks who help us with that work, right? And it becomes a bit more about managing a team and managing delivery and making sure that everybody's getting the challenges they need, and they're getting the right workloads, and they're getting the right balance, and they're being able to develop their strengths and weakness. So I think it changes over time, and I think a lot of it depends just on where you are in your career and what role you happen to be playing at that moment.
Okay. One of our questions here wants to delve a little bit deeper into challenges tied to the role of being a well engineer. What are the challenges nowadays dealing with a well engineering career, and how do you all recommend overcoming some of those? Do we want to circle around? Kim?
So there's I think you can look at it in terms of you know there's certain we're in a different environment now, and from a technical challenge point of view, you know, our reserves are in more difficult locations and harsher locations. So there's really the technical challenge that we have to meet, and how we're going to be more efficient and how we're going to deliver that technology. And the what I've learned and seen a lot recently, that it's about integration within, but looking at with the industry, and it's really leveraging the ability to get a really diverse team without the preconceptions and paradigms of how we've done something for the last 40 years, and bringing it forward. So that's how I would look at from a technical challenge. And from a personal challenge, I think that we're in a changing environment, and we're in a changing world. And, you know, we're in a company that where we've learned, or we're learning, to judge people for their delivery, and not for the hours that they're behind their desk, and how and the family structures are also very different than to what my parents had, or my parents' parents had. And I think it's more also to any working family as well, and it's how we look at that and how we address it, and how we need to take that empowerment that we have, and how we can deliver within the framework of our lives. And that's flexibility, like Malcolm said, flexible working schedules, working from home, and different types of childcare options, for example.
Malcolm, would you add anything to that?
I think Kim's covered a number of key aspects in terms of the challenge today for today's well engineers. Indeed, the technical side is also the opportunity as well. It makes it even more exciting. Lots more difficult prospects out there. You really get to flex your intellectual muscle, if you will. Also, the challenges and excitement of global working. We work in, the globe is shrinking. We get to deal with many cultures, many different people from around the world, different expectations, different backgrounds. Fundamentally, I've found in the bits that I've worked in, we all essentially want the same things in life. But it's actually understanding the cultural sensitivities and bringing that together to really leverage the best of our global organization.
We have time for a few more questions here. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses, one of our readers would like to know, what are your strengths and weaknesses during your stay at Shell? So what are your standout qualities there, and then what are some things that maybe you are still working on as you progress through your current career path while at Shell? Melissa? It's
an excellent question. And it feeds back on that, self-reflection that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, something that I've learned that I'm very good at is interfacing with people, right? The one-to-one, and being able to work one-on-one with my staff and develop and coach them and give them the opportunities that they need. And in taking something that maybe is complicated, which does tend to happen with large organizations, right? Taking something very complicated and trying to simplify it. But now where I'm striving to work, right, and where I'd like to keep improving is on taking and managing that team to deliver the large projects, right? So how do you take kind of something that's early in concept and put together a team and put the right people and the right skills together in order to ultimately be able to deliver something that's very long-term or very high level. So for me, it's still continuing to work on how do you actually manage at a higher level groups of individuals to deliver a product when you don't always have that one-on-one time to get everyone on board.
Definitely a challenge. Malcolm, strengths and weaknesses?
Strengths, I think, dealing with people, because it's a passion. So I see that as a strength and something I really very much enjoy. Weaknesses, as I go through, I encounter them. So for instance, lack of experience in the business planning and economics environment. I was very much in the past a technical focused person. So then what we did, we have what we call within Shell a development plan, an internal development, individual development plan, which looks at these. We go through self-reflection, we look at where our strengths and weaknesses are, and what can we do together with the organisation to tackle those. So then I mentioned that broadening assignment that came about, and to really use where my strengths were on the technical side, but also use that opportunity to tackle one of my weaknesses or lack of experience was on the business side of things. So that actually my career path was adjusted to tackle that aspect of my skill set. So, and it's an ongoing process. So every day, every year, every month, every day sometimes, we always solicit feedback. I talk to my team, hey, how did I deliver that? Or how can I improve here? And sometimes I get very blunt feedback, as you'd expect from the offshore community in the Gulf of Mexico. And I act upon that. So sometimes it's improved communication. Sometimes it's a little less dry sense of humor, but I've had that one ever since I was at preschool, so still working on that one.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. The first one deals with career path. What is a typical career path of a subject matter expert within Shell? Kim?
So the fundamental, the start of a career is fairly common for the majority of the well engineers, and although we do have certain exceptions, but essentially, if an engineer comes in, for example, as a graduate, they would go through the round 1, round 2 program, and that's a combination of field experience, and it's also a combination of office design work, and they achieve what we call the round 2 certification, which is well, we equate to a pilot's license a little bit, as we call it. So, or if it's an experienced hire, as Melissa mentioned, it would be round 1, round 2 diploma, depending on the experience that that person would have. And from there forward, it's really looking at what we call the individual development plan. And, and that's really the key thing. And that's what I was alluding to earlier on when we get the engineers at the start. I have engineers who come to me and say, I don't want to be operational. And how do I continue to be an engineer, to be in engineering and design work and continue to developing? And that's where it becomes a very, very individual conversation that happens, and getting the individual the right opportunities to develop the technical skills that they would need, for example, to become a subject matter expert. And that's indeed how it doesn't only apply to subject matter experts, but that's indeed how we map out people's careers and where they want to go.
Okay, and our last question deals with more resources. This audience member would like to know, are there publications or organizations that you would recommend to continue your development as you move through your career as an engineer? Malcolm?
That's a good question. Well, I mentioned the development plan that we have. Everybody within Shell has it, every single person. And they recommend resources. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it could be external resources. There are a lot of training facilities here in Houston and elsewhere in the industry. So lots of opportunities. The key is to make sure that every staff member in Shell understands where their strengths and weaknesses are, what are the correct and appropriate opportunities for them to tackle those weaknesses, and then we tailor that program for them. Shell has world-class training. It has a very comprehensive training program internally, but also leverages external training as well. So the key thing is that we do have basic things we have to do within wells. So we've talked about round 1 and round 2, various other courses. But as we move on in our career, then our development plan evolves with us to really tackle our individual needs, not just a cookie-cutter approach. So it's not too many specifics there, but the key thing is that we look at people as individuals as well as our corporate training program.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. And with that, we've reached the end of our program today. I want to thank our panelists and our audience for joining us. In addition, a link to watch the recording will be shared with everyone who registered after the call. Finally, on the career site, all of Shell's wells vacancies globally can be found at shell.com/careers on the wells engineering pages. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.